Hello, I'm Christiane from WSIE Radio. St. Louis is home for jazz, smooth jazz, blues, and easy R&B. When you're in the St. Louis area, tune us in at 88.7 on your FM dial. Stream us worldwide at WSIE.com. We are having a birthday party for Miles Davis. He would have been 95 years old on May 26th. He was born in 1926. We celebrate him today. The Miles Davis Arts Festival recreates a roundtable that occurred 20 years ago at the first Miles Davis Arts Festival. Joining me today, jazz pianist, composer, educator Ahmad Jamal had a great influence on Miles Davis. After Miles' sister, that would be Vince's late mother, Dorothy, turned him on to the playing of Ahmad Jamal. Jamal's piece, Ahmad's Blues, became the foundation for modal pieces from Miles. For 6 decades, Ahmad Jamal has been one of the most successful small group leaders in jazz. Among his many awards, he is a Kennedy Center honoree and he received the Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award. Ron Carter is the most recorded bassist in history. It is an honor to have Ron with us as well. Ron was also a member of Miles Davis's second great quintet from 1963 to 1968. Ron has recorded many albums under his own name. He is a 2-time Grammy Award winner. Ron Carter is a distinguished professor emeritus of the music department at the City College of New York. He is a faculty member of the Juilliard School in New York City, teaching bass and the school's jazz studies program. Miles Davis's older sister, Dorothy, was drummer Vince Wilburn Jr.'s mother. Miles Davis was not only Vince's uncle, but he was also his boss. Vince toured with Miles and played drums on the Miles Davis albums The Man with the Horn and You're Under Arrest. Trumpeter Keon Harold was born and raised in Ferguson, Missouri. He left for New York City and landed his first major gig with Common. He won wide acclaim for his trumpet performances in Don Cheadle's Miles Davis biopic, Miles Ahead. His album, The Musician, draws on elements of jazz, classical, rock, blues, and hip-hop. The album title is a nickname Don Cheadle gave him, combining musician with magician. Magician. The Musician is the name of the album. Trumpeter Russell Gunn also with us, like Miles Davis. Russell grew up in East St. Louis. His high school band leader gave him a life in music. While at Jackson State University in Mississippi, he began playing with R&B singer Johnny Taylor. He established the Royal Crunk Jazz Orchestra. He has an artist in residence position at Columbia College in Chicago. His new album is forthcoming. We will ask him about that. Vocalist Erica Johnson is a native of East St. Louis as well and started her jazz career in the famed Lincoln High School Jazz Band, just like Miles Davis. She sang with the late legend Willie Aikens. She has become one of the best jazz vocalists on the St. Louis scene. She is a master educator. She was a featured vocalist with the Cab Calloway Big Band. Erica is currently the vice president for the St. Louis Blues Society. Her new album is Raising Standards. And Jason Brown is a member of the board of directors for Home, House of Miles, East St. Louis. Jason was also born in East St. Louis, and like Miles Davis years before, Jason was a member of the award-winning Lincoln High School Jazz Band. He has received Missouri Arts and Education Council's Art Educator of the Year Award. He has also received St. Louis Americans Excellence in Education Award, serving as a music educator, literacy coach, and school district administrator for 25 years. He serves as the director of bands at East St. Louis Senior High School. Welcome, all of you. It is an honor to have all of you at this round table. And I'd like to start off with talking with Jamal, Ahmad Jamal, Mr. Jamal. First of all,
Yes.
happy birthday, sir. Next week, Ahmad Jamal will be. We
Thank you
won't say
very
how
much.
old you are. Uh, Mr. Jamal, in 1955, Miles Davis used Red Garland as his pianist because he loved the lyricism that Red Garland played with, because Red and Miles were influenced by your piano technique. Can you talk about how your piano technique influenced the way Miles Davis played his trumpet?
Yeah, I'm really puzzled sometimes about Miles's affinity for my work, but I accept it.
Mm.
So Red Garland, I mean, he didn't need any help from me. He's a fabulous player. I used to see Red quite often in Philadelphia, where a lot of greats come from. Also, my native state produced a lot of great players, including Earl Garner and also many others. So I'm delighted that he used my Muhammad's Blues. It was on Broadway for 52 weeks in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf.
Oh.
And they wanted to call it the Big Bad Wolf, and they changed the name. They didn't want to pay them for using Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Wolf. It's anecdotal, but I got paid for Muhammad's Blues, and they changed the name to Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. So they were on Broadway for 2 years using my Muhammad's Blues. I got paid, and the owners of the Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Wolf didn't.
Wow, I did not know that. And
so
and
that was a
Ahmad,
very interesting excursion for Muhammad's Blues.
and Ahmad's Blues was an inspiration with the modal jazz that Miles Davis created in the Kind of Blue album. Perhaps without Ahmad's Blues, there would not have been a Kind of Blue album.
Well, I didn't know that. That's news to me. Ron would know more about that history than me.
And can you talk about the space versus density in your playing that influenced Miles' trumpet playing?
Well, I call it discipline. I don't call it space. It's discipline. You have to observe certain rests. Music has rests and music has notes. And the silent moments are just as important as the ones that are being played, in my opinion. So that was discipline, not silence, that I was executing or trying to execute. And obviously it had a lot of influence on the musical arena, but I call it discipline.
And that lyricism that Miles had with his trumpet playing, obviously he got that from your discipline.
Well, I got that from my hometown. Pittsburgh produced a lot of extraordinary players.
Right.
Billy Strayhorn, great Billy Strayhorn was one of the great writers. Earl Garner, to say the least, he went to the same grade school and high school I went to. Dodo Mamarosa, whom the world has forgotten, another one, and Earl Hines and George Benson, a newcomer, so to speak, and a little tap dancer named Gene Kelly. He's from Pittsburgh.
Art Blakey was.
Pardon me?
Art Blakey from Pittsburgh or Philadelphia? Drummer Art
Pittsburgh.
Blakey. Pittsburgh.
I didn't understand.
Another. Yeah. Great. Now.
Gene Kelly was from East Liberty, from Pittsburgh.
Oh. Great.
Absolutely.
Mr. Jamal, did you become friends with Miles ever? Did you see each other throughout your lifetimes?
That's a very interesting question, because I lived at 75th and Riverside Drive, and Miles lives a block, 2 blocks away on 77th Street, between West End and Riverside Drive. Ron would be familiar with that. I didn't go over there except on 2 occasions. But Miles, I remember Miles, we were doing a concert in Europe somewhere, and the first person he greeted when he got out of his car was me. So I was very taken aback by that. And we had some memorable moments, but we didn't hang out.
Okay.
There was an attempt to get Cannonball and myself and Miles on record, but that never reached fruition.
Oh man, what that would have been. That would have been incredible. Thank you. Thank you for your input and your stories.
Welcome.
Mr. Carter, what was your experience with Miles Davis as a band leader and as a teacher in your years playing with him?
I think Miles learned a lot from the guys in the band.
Hmm.
Of course, he was the band leader, but there were other, in this case, four other points of view: Herbie, Wayne, or George Coleman, and Tony and I, whose opinion he took advantage of and would understood to see what our point of view was before he put his stamp on whatever he thought was most important of those four views. I thought he was a fair leader. I thought he was an honest leader. And I think each of us, the four of us, look forward every night to have a chance to play some wonderful music.
Hmm.
And I think he looked forward to going to work, not knowing what he's going to expect every night. He was expecting that. What do I expect?
Right. And Herbie Hancock had nicknamed him the Sorcerer. Do you have any specific stories that would exhibit Miles' sorcerer-like behavior?
Well, I'm not sure how you define that, so I can't really respond to that. I think Miles was one of the people with this band. He understood that those guys in this band, May, Herbie, Wynn, and or George,
Hmm.
would go to the mat for him. And I think that we all felt, that he would go to the mat for us. If we had any financial difficulties, or if we had any legal problems, or situations that needed some outside help or money or influence, we all felt that if we needed that help, Miles was there for us. I
Hmm.
think he trusted our musical judgment. He realized that we were some four serious musicians with him, and he had to come to work every night expecting a wonderful surprise. Our job was to give it to him, and we did pretty good at that.
Great. Do you veteran players have some advice for the wonderful young lions who join us today, Russell and Keon and Erica, in playing jazz? Do you have anything to impart to them?
Well, I don't really know them. I know their names because the past 2 years there's been not much communication outside of my address.
Right,
You know, uh,
for all of us.
I'd like to offer them some information, some tips. I hate that word. Some advice once the world opens up, and I get a chance to step out of my address and
Mm.
go visit them at their address. If I have a concern, is that they will. Uh, it's one thing to say I trust your judgment. It's another thing to put my judgment in your shoes, and I don't know them well enough that my commentary will kind of be best given to somebody else who's willing to not just accept it, but put it in their pocketbook, put it in their toolbox. I don't know these young people who I'm looking at. I'd like to know them at some point, and like to think that when the bands do become working again, that they would make it a point to hear where I'm playing, so they can see what my truth is. And
Sure, very true.
should they stop their busy schedule and want to put a comma in that sentence? If they allow my band to be that comma, then we can talk about a lot of things, I'm sure. But it's up to them to kind of extend themselves. Yeah, I'm one of the oldest guys in this six squares, but they got responsible too. I tell my students, part of my responsibility is to teach you. Your responsibility is to be the student. You got to bring something to the lesson, not just show up. So, and again, not knowing these four people I'm looking at, other than their names in the magazines and the papers and it shows up, I hope we meet someday. We can have a real air hug and a real handshake. And when I play F sharp on a D chord, they don't get messed up about that. I mean that note. You want some roots? Go to the market.
I love that. That was great.
I'm going to hang on that for a moment.
Hey, Uncle Ron, you gonna drop the mic so early in the?
I just learned that phrase 3 weeks ago. Thanks, Benny.
Vince, your mother Dorothy, of course, was Miles' older sister. Tell us the story about how Miles got his first trumpet.
You know, I think my story to be told. My grandmother wanted him to play violin,
Mm-hmm.
and he wanted to play trumpet. So my grandfather brought him, purchased his first trumpet, and um, you know, rest is history. You know, it was Uncle Miles and his trumpet everywhere. You know, everywhere. The two never parted. You know,
He was always practicing.
always, always. You know, that's what I heard from my mom. They had a piano at the house too, and Uncle Vernon, my Uncle Miles and my mom's younger brother played piano. They all three played piano.
Mm-hmm.
So, and my grandmother played a little piano. We called her Mama Cleo. So, and
And I understand Miles would sneak into your mother's piano lessons and learn something.
yeah, that's what I heard. You know, that's what I heard. See, I've got all the stories from my mom and my Uncle Vernon, but Uncle Miles never really talked about it too much. You know.
Mm-hmm. So you have to hear it from other people.
Yeah, yeah. And friends of there's a young lady by the name of Leanne Bonner, who resides in East St. Louis, who was in the documentary Birth of the Cool, and
Mm-hmm.
I like to get my stories from her. You know,
Great. I'm sure she's told you a lot.
because it's fact. You know. And then Cheryl Miles' oldest child, his daughter, she's got a lot of great stories too.
Great.
I think Mr. Jamal knew Uncle Vernon, right, Mr. Jamal?
No, I don't think so.
You didn't know Uncle Vernon? Okay, I thought we talked about that once. Hold on.
My recall is not as good as it used to be. So
Okay.
excuse them all if they say in France if I did meet him.
Okay.
Well, Vince, you have told, but tell everybody again the story about how Miles didn't even pick up his diploma. He was just off.
Well, that's another one. I think the day he graduated, the next day he was on his way to New York, and my mom received his high school diploma from Lincoln. He wanted to get to New York and get to Juilliard.
And the Lincoln High School Jazz Band is an incredible training ground for not only Miles, but through the generations. Can all of you who have gone to Lincoln High School Jazz Band comment on the training you've gotten, starting with Jason?
Yes, absolutely. My experience at Lincoln Senior High School was incredible. First met Mr. Ron Carter, Professor Ron Carter now, when I became a trumpet player within the jazz band. It was an incredible experience because not only was Mr. Carter a great educator, he believed in exposing us to opportunities that would help us become better musicians, better people, and just expose us to opportunities that would make us better people in life. Without that experience with Mr. Carter, there's no telling where I would be today. So I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the opportunity I had with the band program, and it's continuing to, play a very important role in my life because I'm back in East St. Louis as the director of bands at East St. Louis Senior High School. There's no longer East St. Louis Lincoln Senior High School. It's now dissolved into one high school. So I hold the incredible responsibility of trying to bring back some of those traditions that was once established with Mr. Ron Carter. And, with the day and age of, all the challenges that art programs are experiencing, it's challenging. Funding is an issue. The recent struggle with the pandemic that we're all experiencing. We're experiencing lots of hardships, but I'm grateful for this exciting opportunity because we've just recently received a substantial grant from the Illinois Art Council, and it's going to help revitalize this program and handle some of those challenges that we're experiencing with our band program here in East St. Louis. So it's a very exciting time.
That's fantastic. And Erica, tell us about your experience in the Lincoln High School Jazz Band.
Well, my experience was a little different because I was always fascinated with scatting.
Mm.
And I would always go to the Lincoln spring concerts, and my father was a teacher there. And I always used to ask him, Daddy, one day I want to sing with that band. And he said the only way I could go to that school was if I was in his homeroom. So I had to be in my dad's homeroom to get into the band. But Mr. Carter knew that I wanted to scat, so he would make me spend a week with a different section. So one week I would be with the trumpets, learning their lines. And then the next week I would be with the trombones, learning their lines. And as we were learning pieces, my job was to learn all the lines as if I was a horn player. And so I always considered myself more of a musician than a vocalist because I had to know the changes and I had to understand scales and I had to know the tune or not get up on the stand. So Mr. Carter taught us a lot of lessons that I still use and that I teach. And I think that the best thing that he did for us from the Lincoln program was that he taught us how to be good teachers. So I feel that we've been able to impact so many people because of Mr. Ron Carter's influence on just our work ethic and how we are business people and how we take care of our money. You know, those were things that were very important to him to teach us, not only to play, but to sustain ourselves while we played. So that's a life lesson that'll last forever.
Yes, those are lessons that go beyond music, and it's so important as musicians to learn how to take care of your money and everything you've just said. And like you said, you consider yourself a musician, just like Sarah Vaughan considered herself a musician, not necessarily a vocalist.
Yes, I agree with all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that more vocalists need to learn the music and not just sing pretty. That was something that Mr. Carter taught me too. You have to learn the song first before you go off. You gotta learn how to be inside before you can go outside.
Yeah.
And then come back inside.
That's wonderful advice. Russell, talk about your experience in the Lincoln High School Jazz Band.
Well, first, I just want to go back to this Ron Carter, Mr. Ron Carter, who we standing in front of right now. I have seen you play many times, just so you know.
Yeah,
I've stood in your presence on quite a few occasions. I mean, I know you don't know me from a hole in the wall, but just, you know, that you know that. And also Mr. Ahmad Jamal also. Yeah, you may not see us or know us like that, but you can trust and believe that we've all been sitting there at the bottom of the bandstand in wonder, especially in our early days in New York or just coming on the scene. I know Keon can attest to that. Talking about being in the Lincoln High School Jazz Band and talking about the other Ron Carter, our Professor Ron Carter. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be here, of course, if it wasn't for that. I think the thing for me that kind of connects these two things that we're talking about is that, of course, Miles Davis went to the same high school that we went to, and I remember the first day I went to band practice, and I went into the jazz band room, and Mr. Carter told me that I have a lot to live up to because you know Miles Davis went here, right? You know that was always like the sword of Damocles hanging over my head. know Miles Davis, and so you have to be so with that, up until I was a very young adult, I never even really, I made a conscious decision not to really study Miles's approach or style because I didn't even, because that was too much of a weight to carry, I felt. But as I got older and I really started to listen to records and started to understand to understand the sound of music more than just the mathematics of music, which is what I was drawn to initially. Like I think most young jazz musicians are, especially a trumpet player. When you're a trumpet player, you're always going to be attracted to initially, you know, a more brass sound, a more mathematically logical sound like a Freddie Hubbard or Lee Morgan or something like that. You're always going to be attracted to that first because the sound is almost logical. You could almost do the math in your head. But to really understand Miles's approach, and it takes some seasoning. It takes some real musical understanding about not necessarily the math of the music, but the sound of the music. And I've always tried to impart, if I have something to impart, and that is to when you're listening to music, is to try to understand the sound of the music, because the sound of the music and the mathematics of the music are one and the same, but also two different things. So, and that's my experience, a small part of my experience in Lincoln High School growing up.
You mean the feeling, the lyricism in the playing, Russell?
Yeah, well, there's an unknown. I mean, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn because I know this Ron Carter, the great Ron Carter bassist, and Mr. Ahmad Jamal will know a lot better than me. But I just think that there's an unknown substance that is in the music that really can't be quantified. It's like you could tell, like all jazz musicians when they're young, they have they get a book of transcriptions, or like a Charlie Parker omnibook or something like that, where you can literally see every note that was played that Charlie Parker ever played. But yet, I mean, nobody can really sound like Bird because there's an unknown element that comes from whatever you want to call it, the creator, the universe, or whatever. There's an unknown element that's inside it, and until you can really absorb that part of it, which I just call the sound, until you can absorb the sound, then I think that's what separates, you know, good musicians and those who we consider to be great.
Keon, I think you're on your iPhone now. Is that correct? Can you hear us? You're
Yes, I'm on my iPhone now. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can see you. I can hear you.
Beautiful.
Tell us, what was the experience like playing as Miles in the Miles Ahead movie?
All right. First of all, before I answer that, I want to, pay homage to Mr. Ron Carter, who's on here. Obviously, I've had the opportunity to listen to your music, and also we recorded a song with Lakeisha Benjamin. I'm a tribute to Coltrane. A little while ago, right before everything shut down. So it's always a pleasure and an honor to hear your words and to hear your music. Also, Mr. Jamal, Live at the Persian is something always has inspired me from the beginning, as to how to play standards and how to play and when not to play and stuff like that. So I really appreciate everything you both have contributed to the legacy of what this music is we call jazz. Black music. So going to also shout out to Russell Gunn. I was inspired and influenced by him. I'm still influenced by him as a trumpet player, as a man, and just in general. He's done amazing things, and as a kid growing up, just hearing him playing like a machine gun every time he came back home to St. Louis was special to this day. As a matter of fact, I learned the tune, Miles Davis tune, Solar, because of Russell Gunn from one of his records. So it's a connection that we all have. It's a spirit. This music is a spirit, and it's, we share it all, from the oldest to the youngest, and it's a beautiful spirit. Going to the Miles Ahead movie, Robert Glasper and Don Cheadle had reached out to me to be a part of the film, because they wanted somebody who respected the lineage of Miles. And I don't know if I can sound like him. I can play Miles-esque. So it was not like being Miles. I could never be Miles. I could only, take the lessons that all of his recordings, from Live at the Plug, Nickel, to so many that have influenced me. It was just an honor, and the kind of thing that, I don't know, it's tough to mimic your master, to mimic your father. I look at Miles as a father when it comes to the idea of the trumpet, to the idea of artistry. So it's an interesting journey to try to do that well. I think we did it well, and it's a humbling thing to listen to him, to know what he's done, to know what he's left, and at the same time be called to try to play a role ultimately. And that's what I looked at. It was just a role. I look at Miles as the supreme innovator, and that, me playing him, seems counterintuitive to trying to be like that, but it was an amazing learning experience that I would never trade. I had the opportunity, to record with Herbie, to record with Mr. Wayne Shorter, and stand next to him, knowing that Miles was there all the time. It was just a special learning experience for me, and a supreme stepping stool in my career as a musician, as a person.
Thank you for that, Keon. And Keon mentioned Miles the Innovator. This is for everybody. Let's talk about what an innovator he was. In his book, he said, I changed music 6 times. Birth of the Cool on down through the electric jazz fusion period. Let's get comments from everybody about Miles as an innovator. Mr. Jamal.
Excuse me?
Can you comment on Miles as an innovator in the way he changed music 6 times throughout his career?
The first thing we have to focus on is where he was from. East St. Louis. St. Louis also produced monumental talent. And that counts whether you're from Pittsburgh or from Kansas City or from the great New Orleans. So Miles was a certain influence by the atmosphere that St. Louis and East St. Louis produced. When I left home, I left with a big band called George Hudson. And George Hudson had all the monumental players in the band from St. Louis. He also had Ernie Wilkins, who wrote the orchestration. So I left home with a band that was quartered in St. Louis. So I certainly value all the things that I learned from that city. And Miles became a product of St. Louis and East St. Louis.
Great. Mr. Carter, can you comment on your experience with Miles as being an incredible innovator, changing music several times throughout his career?
Well, I think one of the things he did was hire the guys who would help that change. As a band, as his concepts, as his views of music was going from one stage to another, I think he looked around to see people who he thought could help his vision that he heard in his head come to some level of productivity, some kind of actual reality. I think one of his secrets was to be able to find people to fill the roles to match the sound he thought he was hearing in his head, to see if that sound was a valid attempt to make music, whether he was seeing specifically as a different direction of music in and of itself. He was clearly hearing other concepts during the course of his career, and one of his geniuses was to hire people he thought could help that different direction take shape and become public.
and hire young talent. He was an incredible talent scout for young players like yourself. You were in your mid-20s when he found you. Can you tell everybody the story of how he came to find you and bring you into the second grade quintet?
Well, I was working at the gig with Art Farmer at a place called the Half Note in 1963. I had signed up with Art Farmer for a 2-week engagement with Jim Hall on guitar and Walter Perkins on drums. And one night, or during the second night of the gig, Miles came in and heard the first set, I guess. And after the first set, he walked over to me and explained to me that his current band, that included Wynton Kelly, Paul Chambers, Philly Joe Jones, they were leaving him, Jamie Cobb actually, and they were going to be a trio with backing of Wes Montgomery. And he's looking for a band because he's leaving to California that week. And I explained to him, Mr. Davis, I have a job. I'm working with Art Farmer for the next 2 weeks. And right now I'm not available. But if you ask Art Farmer to let me go from my 2-week commitment to him, if he says yes, I'm happy to do this gig. But right now, I got a job. So he went over and asked Miles, he went over to ask Art Farmer if I could leave his gig for the next 2 weeks. And Art said yes. And so he came back and said, well, Art said it's okay. I said, well, I'm going to ask Art if he said it's okay. Come on. So I went over. I said, I don't know why you would do that because he's Miles Davis. I said, Art, I told you I was going to be here for 2 weeks. The only thing that will change that if you say that I can go join him. I'm okay with that. He said, well, I admire that grown-upness, and I thank you for the respect and honor, and I told him he was okay. So I went back and told Miles, okay, Art said it was okay. When are we leaving? And that was it.
Great. Vince, can you comment on your uncle as an innovator and moving music, pushing boundaries, moving music forward several times throughout his career?
Sure. I would also like to say what an honor it is, Mr. Jamal, and I affectionately call Sir Ron Carter Uncle Ron. He lets me call him that. So I'm blessed. I'm blessed. Russell, Keon, and everybody. I lived with Uncle Miles in Malibu with my cousin Aaron, and I've never, to see a man change clothes 6 times a day, and I'm serious. I'm like, you look around and he'd have another set of clothes on, and so playing with him, being in the band, he would always want us to try things, and I know he's done this for all the bands that he's ever had. We never questioned it, and like Uncle Ron said, he would choose musicians who could carry out what he was or contribute is a better word to what he was hearing in his head, and that's what happened. We never knew where he was going, but we were on the ride, or we were there to ride with him, if that makes sense. We were recording a orchestral piece called Aura, which won a Grammy in Copenhagen, and the drummer had a regular acoustic set, but Uncle Miles heard Simmons drum. Now Simmons drums are electronic pads, so in 2 days after going over the passes with the drummer playing acoustic drums, we had a Simmons kit arrive, and I played the Simmons kit with this orchestra and these orchestral pieces, and it worked. But that's the way his mind worked. He just heard things real quick, and he was wanted to try it, and it was amazing to witness that.
Did he ever tell you why he changed clothes 6 times a day?
No, you don't ask. You never ask him. You don't. Listen. Let me just say this. When I and everybody can attest to this, Key and Russell. When Uncle Ron comes to a session, right? I don't ask him anything. He just tells me he says, "What time, Vinny?" I give him the time. He's there before this downbeat, set up, music's in front of him, and 1 or 2 takes, and you know what he does? Back, the bass is back in his case, and he's out. And it's the professionalism, and you don't ask You know what I mean? You just go with it.
Yeah.
You know, and so why he changed clothes 6 times a day, 5, 6 times a day, why he could cook the way he could, why he did the things he did. I just went along for the ride, and I revel in it. You know, when Uncle Ron comes to a session, or when I go to see Mr. Jamal play, it's like,
Yeah,
you know, I don't run up to Mr. Jamal after the concert and say, Mr. Jamal, what was that chord? And you know, I'm like, yeah, you know, and Uncle Ron, in bars, no, no, because this is, you know, this is blessings.
right.
Uncle Miles and Mr. Jamal and Mr. Carter, Uncle Ron, these are blessings. And to be on with the I know I'm getting off track, but
No.
that's the way music is. I saw Russell with Marcus and he was killing. Keon plays with me, plays with my band, and we do sessions together. Amazing. And to play Miles, they had to play that music, you know. And I remember telling Herbie, with my band, we can never play what Uncle Ron and those guys play. Never would we attempt to. We're just playing our interpretation of great music. You know what I mean?
And going back to
But you
Miles,
do understand what I'm saying, right?
yes, and we
Okay.
thank you
Okay.
for your
All right. I'm trying to drop the mic like Uncle Ron.
He's
no,
20 years
Mike,
too young.
Yeah, V.
no, Mike.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, and let's get back to Miles as the innovator, and the young talent scout, finding Tony Williams. And the aspect I want you to talk about is what Herbie talked about in his book of how Tony influenced Miles. Perhaps there would be no Bitches Brew album if Tony Williams hadn't influenced Miles. Can you comment on that, Vince?
Well, I mean, Tony had, if I'm not mistaken, Uncle Ryan, Tony had a Beatles poster in his apartment, and he rented an apartment in the Brownstone on West 77th Street.
Right.
So, just like Uncle Ron said, you know, Uncle Miles would play off the musicians, and your, you know, what you had to contribute on and off the bandstand, on your instrument, and even after the show or after the concert, he would take it into consideration, you know, and it was a give and take. So whatever Tony had to you know, was sharing to him about, you know, Jimi Hendrix and the Beatles and rock music and whatever, he was listening, you know, even if he said, well, you know, I can't say it on F you or something, but
yeah,
believe me, he was checking it, you know.
right.
He was checking it.
Like his affinity for MTV and the tracks that inspired him to do the Rubber Band album.
MTV with the sound down, and if there was a band that he liked, he turned the sound up. So the sound wasn't even on. It was visual more than sound first, and then we turn it up. He'd call the record label and have them send over the record of this certain groups that he dug. You know, that's how we did Human Nature, Time After Time, Mr. by Broken Wings, a song called Broken Wings by Mr. But by him just watching visual, just watching the TV while he was doing something else, painting, or playing piano, or listening to concert tapes. That was amazing.
Now I want to lighten the mood a little bit. Not that it's been heavy. We're having a birthday party here for Miles Davis. Would have been 95, our hero Miles. I want to talk about fashion. Vince, the last time I spoke with you was when the Rubber Band album came out. And one topic that we didn't get time to talk about was Miles' fashion. You talk about him changing his clothes 6 times. Do any of you have great fashion stories like that? Lenny White experience, Vince. Can you tell that story?
What now?
How Miles came up to Lenny White while they were playing, and Lenny and
No, I think that was Marcus.
Marcus.
And he whispered to Marcus. Marcus thought he played a wrong note, Marcus Miller. And he asked Marcus, how you like my shoes? but you're looking at two gentlemen who are impeccable
with fashion.
Mr. Jamal.
Mr. Jamal and Mr. Carter.
And see, Uncle Ron is quiet, but we can't go in this closet. We can. I'm trying to get some ties, some shirts, anything I can. But it's hard. It's
Sir
hard.
Ron Carter hand-me-downs. That's what you're.
No. Just to
Hand
see
me ups.
where he purchased them. Where he
Right.
I think he's got a designer, but we won't go into that.
Oh,
Thank you.
custom-made. Well, and Vince
But
talked.
it's part of it. It's part of it. What you wear, the way how you approach the music and how you dress to go to work.
Yes.
That's important.
And
Attitude.
attitude.
Yeah. Yeah.
Come into this convo, Keon. Yeah. Attitude. And as I look back at photos of Miles from the late 50s, the 60s, the shirts are impeccable. You can just even tell from a black and white photo. Impeccable. The shoes, the trousers, what a dapper dresser. Anybody else have anything to add?
My grandfather was like that. His father.
Oh, really?
One time I had on a Nike sweatshirt and sweatpants,
Mhm.
about to go on stage, and he made me go change. He held a concert. He said I looked like a effing walking billboard. So he made me go and put some hip on, But anybody else? I mean, it just comes to mind.
And when the guys were making the Rubber Band album, they said Miles would come in and they'd make a wager on how much his outfit cost that day.
Cost and the way I've probably only seen him wear jeans maybe once or twice, and that was when he was painting. He had some denim overalls,
Really?
But I like I said, Mr. Jamal. I've seen Mr. Jamal. I've seen Uncle Ron on stage. Uncle Ron in a session, impeccably dressed.
Mm.
So that's high level.
Yes. Let's talk about albums coming out. Vince, since you were the one speaking last, talk about the Merci Miles album that's coming out in, I think, in a couple of weeks, a week and a half, something
No,
like
it's coming out Friday.
this Friday. Okay, I know. I got it slated on my New Music Friday stuff on my Facebook posts. So tell everybody about that show that is now coming out.
Well, it was Merci Miles was recorded in Jazz in Vienna. It was his last a few of the last concerts before he passed, before he transitioned.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was recorded in June or July of 1991, and he passed away in September. But it was with the last touring band, and it's a great record, and the cover art, the photography, and the complete package from Rhino Warner Brothers is amazing. We have to, we're really proud of it, and I'm sure Uncle Miles will be proud too.
And you're continually putting out more reissues for Miles,
Yes.
so
Yes.
our younger generations can explore and experience his music.
Yes, and I think that the younger musicians should listen to the music that was recorded and before us, so they can stay on the right track. A lot of times we seem to wander, but if you have a chance to experience great music, by all means, and it's available to us.
Yes.
Uncle Ron sent me one of his pieces of vinyl. It's amazing. It's on the turntable right now. And when I get off the phone, I'm going to go listen to it. And Live at the Pershing. And I know, Mr. Jamal, you have tons of records. But
so many.
Live at the Pershing.
So many. But my mother, she had about 10 copies of that record. So, and then I saw you play with Idris when you were here at Catalina, and that was amazing. With Idris, the great Idris Muhammad. And
Yeah.
every time I see you play, it's like, So, yeah. But that's just one of your many records that I adore.
Hey, Vincent, is Catalina still open?
Yes, they're gradually, opening up.
Oh,
Give her my regards.
I will.
Well, I wanted to speak to that if I could.
Yes.
Just as a young vocalist, a lot that I learned about Miles was through Eddie Jefferson's writing of the lyrics to his solos. And I thought, and you know, again, in my approach of wanting to be a horn, a lot of the lessons that I learned were inscribed on those solos through lyrics. And I think that in the tradition of at least continuing to teach that, I think that we need to keep those lessons available and start teaching our vocalists how to learn horn solos. And Mr. Jamal and Mr. Carter, I would like to be adopted by you, since, you know, everybody is a uncle. I want an uncle. Can I have an Uncle Jamal? Can I have an Uncle Carter? Do you take girls? I mean, I'm nice, you know. Just putting that out there. I want to be adopted. So yeah, there it is.
Adopted me. Erica, tell us about your new album, Raising Standards.
Yes, my album, Raising Standards, was recorded by students. And was also produced by two young producers here, Antonio Foster and Carlos Brown Jr. Because I think that as we get older, we need to start allowing our young people to lead us. We don't know everything as an adults. And the young man who did the photos is actually, he's a very well-respected vocalist around town, Dylan Triplett. And, you know, just believing in these young people was the purpose of the album, Raising Standards, and putting myself in young people's hands. And I also have some originals on there. So it was a heartfelt, wonderful project.
And we are playing it here on WSIE. Again, when you're in the St. Louis area, you can tune us in at 88.7 on your FM dial, and anywhere in this world, you can get us at WSIE.com. Russell Gunn, you have an album that will be coming out. Tell us about it.
Oh yeah, but if I can,
yes,
I would like to go back just a bit, and just and well, the first thing is that my personal favorite Miles Davis recording is Miles Davis live at the Black Hawk, and that was the record that actually, the first time I heard it, that was the recording that I said to myself, God damn, I've been wasting all of this time not messing with Miles when I really should have been paying attention. And quite honestly, it really wasn't because of Miles. It was because, like what Mr. Ron Carter was talking about earlier, it was the interaction with the ensemble. And his interaction with, first it was the interaction with Jimmy Cobb that just made me feel really African. And then the interaction with Wynton Kelly, it was a musical experience that really changed how I started to understand his playing and the way he played and his understanding of the music. And to go back to your earlier question, because we never really talked about it that much, it was about him as an innovator. I think a lot of times we talk about those three things. We talk about Birth of the Cool, and then we talk about Kinda Blue, and then we talk about his electric period. But I think it's a little deeper than that, because I think about his ensembles, starting with the ensemble with Philly Joe and Red Garland and I guess Paul Chambers.
Yeah.
And then the ensemble with Paul Chambers and Jimmy Cobb and Wynton Kelly and then with Herbie and Ron and Tony. When you think about it, there was a long period of them playing the exact same songs. There was a lot of recordings, and they played the exact same songs for however many years, but they all were completely different recordings. And that to me, and it's kind of piggybacking on what Mr. Carter was talking about, how being an innovator is not necessarily being the person that says, all right, do this, do that. Being an innovator is having enough ear and enough trust to be like, man, you know what? Yeah, let's do that. What you doing? Yeah, let's do that right there. So if you could listen, how many times can you listen to Bye Bye Blackbird Bye with three different bands, and it be some completely different stuff. I mean, from whatever to lot cooking at the Plug Nickel. I mean, to me, those it's the same songs but completely different ways of approaching the music. To me, that's what innovation is, and the understanding of if you're going to be a band leader, then that's what being a band leader really is. Actually, hiring the people to do the job, not necessarily hiring people to do what you tell them to do. So that's what I wanted to talk about him as being an innovator. And I do have a record coming out, and I feel I don't, when you start talking about your own self when you're talking about greatness, it's always a hard thing. But yeah, I have a big band, and my big band is called the Royal Crunk Jazz Orchestra, and just like Miles, the influences, musical influences of this band varies from a very wide range, and rhythmically, it's a really modern big band rhythmically, but still at the basis of it, the language that we use to improvise and complement each other with is still all Charlie Parker's language. So we still keep with the tradition, the language, and the only thing that I think actually ever changes is the rhythmic aspect of it anyway. So, and that's what we do. And the record is called The Serious Mystery, and it's a follow-up to a larger piece that I'm doing. The first part of it was called Pyramids, and it was about the pyramids built by Africans all over this world that no one ever really talks about in China. And Jason and Keon and Erica would tell you that we grew up about a mile away from a massive pyramid complex in Cahokia, Illinois. And so that's what Pyramids was about, that middle period. And the first in this record that's coming out is called The Serious Mystery, and it's about that first connection between that up there, and our people in Africa. And
it's due out when, Russell?
August 6th is the official release date.
Jason, let me go to you now. Can you tell us a little bit about House of Miles, East St. Louis, and then I want to talk about your work with the jazz students.
Yeah, just a great partnership. Lauren Park serves as the president of House of Miles, East St. Louis, and she has been instrumental with helping us get resources, exposing us to opportunities. It's just been incredible over the past 5 years. Just recently, my students had a chance during the early part of May to attend a jazz clinic and workshop with a gentleman by the name of Lenny Yarbrough, who's one of Mr. Ron Carter, the music educator. On his first students, he was his lead alto saxophonist. And from that experience, each and every one of my students who attended this workshop was able to get their tuition covered from Lenny Yarbrough. He covered their tuition for Mr. Carter's, it's called Carter's Jazz Festival. He hosted his first jazz festival this year towards the end of May. And he covered the tuition for all of my students. And that was through that partnership through the House of Miles. And I'll just say, Lauren Parks is just a precious asset to our organization here at our band program here in East St. Louis. Because whenever I need some, if I'm struggling getting some supplies or struggling trying to get my students exposed to some rich opportunity that would help them, I can call on her and she's going to do whatever she can to help with that process. I also like to talk a little bit about what we're dealing with here at the high school, the band program. This COVID situation has really taken a toll on the music department. And I'm very proud of the staff, the district administrators in East St. Louis, because they've come together and we formed a group of 6 staff members throughout the district who are meeting regularly, almost bi-weekly, to address some of the challenges with revitalizing the band program. As I mentioned earlier, we got this substantial grant from the Illinois Arts Council. We're using this grant to bring in outside resources to help develop student talents. For a period of time, we experienced not having a feeder program in our middle schools. And, by the time the students get to high school wanting to play an instrument, it's too late because they're left behind compared to their counterparts in surrounding school districts, because most students start playing instruments around 4th, 5th grade. And many of our students wasn't getting that opportunity. But now with this laser-like lens on some of the concerns and challenges of the district, we're working to overcome those challenges. So hats off to district administrators in East St. Louis, District 189 for listening and helping us to actually accomplish those things that we need to do to help prepare students and give them that rich musical opportunity that they deserve in the program. So, yeah, and if I can, I just want to piggyback to the innovation thing just really quick. I just wanted to say that Mr. Ron Carter, the music educator, he told us, he always challenged us. One of the first questions he would ask us in the beginning of rehearsals: who are you listening to? He stressed the importance of listening to the greats. And Miles Davis was one of the people I focused on as a young trumpet player in high school. I was able to get my hand on 2 transcriptions. One of them was a transcribed solo of Oleo, and the other one was So What. These 2 solos helped me to really understand how to articulate, how to really approach jazz. And, I'm just forever grateful because it's opportunities and teaching opportunities like this that help give students the tools that they need to excel and build and do great things in the music.
Absolutely. Gentlemen, we've reached an hour, which is amazing to me. Vince, I'd like one last question to you. What do you think your uncle would say about all this celebration of him for so many years?
Can we sprint it? I never want to. I've asked that question a lot. What would he think?
Yeah.
It was hard to say, and I don't want to say what he would think. He would probably, say thank you and be off writing some more music or on a tour or
Mm-hmm.
going. But he kept everything internal,
Yes.
So, but the family's pleased that we're doing it.
Great.
And I'm personally honored to be on this Zoom with each and every one of you. So I thank you.
Thank you. Herbie Hancock had written in his book, Possibilities, as long as there are people playing music, stretching themselves, and exploring new ideas, Miles Davis lives on. Everyone, I thank you so much. I hope we don't have to wait another 20 years to do this panel again. I'm Christiane from WSIE Jazz Radio. This is the Miles Davis Arts Festival.